Hi, I just wanted to jump on and do a really quick presentation. And what I want to talk about today is the soul versus the ego. My name is Amanda Tweed, and I have been on this self realization journey. The soul has been on the journey consciously since 2011. So the soul is always journeying. It's never ending. It can go on for eternity. Well, it does go on for eternity. I just want to make a point here that the top state, the awareness that is aware of itself, is not the soul. The soul appears in awareness. So, awareness is the background, or we can say it's life itself. Awareness has the assurance that I exist. Before anything, before any condition, before anything, I exist. But we created a soul so that we could have an experience and we could play the game of life. The soul is the pure mind, and the ego is the psychological mind that wants to be secure and appears to be separate. And I'm just hoping that this presentation brings some clarity around awakening and the one who wakes up and what the experience is of awakening. So I'm going to dive in, and I went to the Bible. And I went to the book of Genesis, chapter 2, verse 7, because this is a really good starting point as to how the soul came about. So, Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, then the Lord God formed, that is, created the body of man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And the man became a living being, an individual, complete in body and spirit. Now, I'm reading this from the Amplified Version, but I'm pretty sure that the King James Version and maybe the New King James Version says that man became a living soul. Some translations say soul, and again, this one is saying became a living being. But the soul is the part of us where we experience the world. And we came here to experience the world, to have the best party ever, and then drop the body and I don't know, whatever we've planned to do next, because we may all have a different journey. But the soul is definitely here to give us the best experience. And I just want to keep on the soul. I want to keep on talking about the pure mind because I think it's important that we distinguish the difference between who we are with our state of happiness, our pure mind, our correct mind versus the ego mind. So the pure mind, I'm covering three aspects: the mind, the will, and the emotions. The pure mind is whole and complete. We experience the pure mind when we are rested in the body of bliss and the body of wisdom. The body of bliss and the body of wisdom, I'm talking about the koshas, the five bodies. But the pure mind, when the body of bliss and the body of wisdom is the predominant state of the beingness. The beingness is, we are sort of looking through different sheaths. And when we look through the body of bliss and the body of wisdom, we experience the pure mind, the mind that doesn't have any conditions. It has no behaviors, no habits, no likes, no dislikes. It's not looking to control anything, fix anything. It doesn't need any love. It just is. And it is so happy. It's led by intuition and spontaneous action. That's it. It's just freedom. It's complete and utter freedom to another level. The will, this is the will of the self. So that we created this mind to go and enjoy everything that we encounter. And so that is the will of the self. That was the decision that we made. The decision was we make this mind so that I can experience myself. I can experience myself in other beings because it's the self looking at the self. Every action comes from intuition and spontaneous movement. The sense of doership is non existent. So there's no doer. Things happen, the body moves, the body dances, we eat, we sleep, we do everything, but there's no separate one doing it. There's no person, it's not personal. And then the emotions. The natural emotional state of the pure mind is happiness. And I think I mentioned that when we looked at the mind. Let's just move the slide on. Now I want to have a look at the ego mind. The ego mind, I will look at the three aspects, the mind, the will, and the emotions. So the ego mind, it's conditioned with habits and behaviors. Thoughts are experienced and have the capacity to be loud and uncontrolled. So when we are in the ego state mind, there's separation. We can experience psychological suffering. We experience thoughts. There's all sorts going on there. The will, most decisions are made from the thinker, which is only a thought, and it's created from the attention. And then the emotions are unstable by their true nature as they are energy in motion. And I heard it once, somebody said the emotion is energy in motion. That's where the word comes from. Don't know how true it is, but it sounds kind of right and it resonates. Now, this ego mind is not a mistake. So it's not as if somebody come along and whacked us on the head and took away our pure mind and then we ended up as an ego and fighting. No, it was, we fell from the pure mind into the ego mind. And it's, well, once it's seen and once waking up has happened, nothing really happened. So there was no one falling asleep and no one waking up. So it's all part of the dance. It's all part of experience. And we came here in a body that we call a baby's body that is left to the mercy of other human beings. And that's where the conditioning went in and the likes and dislikes and all sorts go in, culture, food, music, you name it. It goes into that baby's body and it becomes the condition of that soul. And I think that we did this because we are sovereign beings and we know that we can only ever be ourselves no matter what, and that absolutely nothing, there is nothing that can destroy us. So we came and we went all out. We completely forgot who we was. We experienced suffering. And the beauty about suffering is it's in direct contrast to our true nature, the pure mind. So let's talk about waking up and how the psychological mind, the ego mind, is actually an aid to waking us up. The experience of waking up from the dream is the psychological mind falling away, leaving the pure mind, which is oneness. Now, the psychological mind is the absolute opposite to the pure mind. The pure mind is spontaneous, joyful, relaxed, happy, no problem, nothing to fix. The psychological mind is the complete opposite and then some. It literally wants to control everything. It feels insecure. There's problems. It complains. There's no gratitude. It's the complete opposite. And we created the psychological mind so that we could taste the opposite to who we are, so that when we overcome the psychological mind and return to our happiness, we feel it 100 times more. So we kind of took the mind for granted. I I've come across some beings that live in countries where electricity is not taken for granted and a glass of water is not taken for granted. And it's a, when they have power cuts for a number of hours, and it's experiencing living in a home with no electricity, which means a lot of the appliances are not able to work. So when the electricity does come back on, it's like, oh my God, thank God. So they know what it's like to be without something. And when that thing comes back, they are so grateful. And it's a bit like what we did to ourselves. We never knew what we had until it was gone. And then we fought and done all sorts of craziness to get that feeling back. But the more that we tried to do it, the more we was moving away from our true nature. And then something in us, at some point, we know that the happiness that we are looking for is deep within. So we set up all of these props, we set up all of these spiritual teachers and gurus and all sorts of things in this amazing, amazing world to point us back home, because we have to pretend that we are lost. Otherwise, it's not going to be a game. And so all that we can say about the psychological mind, it is literally there to help us. It's it's there so that we can eventually say enough is enough. I've had enough of this, because that is exercising the will, and the will of man is so powerful. And it's the will of man, that decision that I have had enough, that brings us back home, brings the dreamer back home. So the waking up is the psychological mind falling away, and you are left with your pure mind. And that is why it feels so amazing to wake up from the dream. It feels, oh my good God, the gratitude it's another level. And that's why we done it, so that we could experience our true nature heightened. So, the self realizing the self, the pure mind can be very powerful in the self realization journey, as it is the soul realizing its true nature. So, in a nutshell, to summarize this, we are existence, we are complete, sovereign beings, nothing to fix, change, improve, nothing at all. But that would be boring. So we created something called a mind, which is the soul. And with that mind, we moved around with no judgment. Nothing is good, nothing is bad, everything is. We then went up another notch and thought, let's just really add some salt and pepper to this. And so we ignored the pure mind and we created the psychological mind, which was separation, and where we can create with the mind, and wars happen, and love happens, and ups and downs, and goods and bads, and everything polarized, because it's not real. And within that dream state of a sufferer, of everything being bad and feeling oppressed, and oh God, all sorts of psychological things happening, because we know that we are sovereign being, and we know that we cannot be destroyed, we know we are eternal, we also know our inherent powers. And so we use the will and we say, enough is enough. I'm making a decision to get out of this. I don't know how, but I'm going to get out of it. And then that starts the journey back home, back to the original pure mind. But what we do when we come back to the pure mind, because we've done like a 360, we've seen everything, we've done everything, we've experienced everything, every emotion we've experienced a billion times, and it's just getting boring now. We turn and we come back to our natural state. And then we want more. We say, do you know what? It's been an amazing journey. The soul has had an amazing time on planet Earth. It's done all these things. I'm ready to really go home. And that's when we tap to the top self, which There's absolutely nothing apart from sovereignty. There's nothing apart from the self. It doesn't even know the soul. The soul doesn't even exist there. And what tends to happen is every time the soul can't really go into, cannot be seen in the top state, but the soul can inquire. The soul can say, who is suffering? Or the soul can ask questions. Was I born? Will I die? And it is always met with the pure presence of the self. And every time that the soul inquires, a little bit more of the soul is merged into the self. And eventually, for most of us, the soul, then there is no separation whatsoever, absolutely no way. The soul is experienced as the perfume of the self. It's just like the story of the sun. The sun appears in the sky. The sky is the absolute. The sky, without the sky, there is no sun. That is the self. And the sun is the soul. It shines forth onto the earth, and it's as if the sun follows its light and says, I am going out into the world. I am separate. And the sun looks around and sees billions of other rays, sun rays. And so it thinks, oh my God, I'm separate. And all of these rays are here and I don't feel safe. And then it has enough of playing the game of separation and the dualistic game and wanting to feel secure and wanting to feel safe. And then it turns itself. It turns back to the sun. And every time the ray turns back to the absolute sun, it gets scorched by the light, but it's drawn to it like a moth to a flame. And so the imagined self in the ray starts to move closer and closer and closer to the sun, and then it becomes one with the sun. It becomes the light. It becomes all of the rays. There's no separation. It realizes that the separation was imagined because the sun is whole. That is the soul. That's the pure mind. And it is seated, rested in the sky, which is rested in the being. But then the sun, as it shines, and it just shines naturally, the attribute of the sun turns and gets sucked in by the sky. And then all you're left with is the pure sky, which is beyond oneness. It just is. There's no words for it. That's the game of life. That's the game that we came to play. I hope this has brought some sense, because a lot of words are used when we are talking about self-realization, and it's to do with the soul waking up, because once you have established your beingness, there is no soul. There is no separate soul. The body moves. The body is the soul, and it moves through the soul. Words can't really describe it, but you do experience being whole and complete with no problem. Yes, things still happen. Yes, you still experience relationships, you experience the five senses, but there's no identification, because this is the game of life. The earth was given to souls. The earth was created for souls to have harmonious relationships with one another, to experience the taste of food, to experience hot and cold. It's just to experience it, but not to identify and fall asleep to it and think that that's all that it is. My name is Amanda Tweed. You can find out more about me. I have a website, www.amandatweed.com, where I have a number of leadership programs, and the leadership is to do with the pure mind. It's to help you to self-realize, self-discover your true mind, the true nature of the mind, and to also, but obviously first and foremost, discover your absolute, your sovereignty, who you are before the mind. And then those two attributes, if we can call it that, get merged together, and um, you become, well, it's wordless. You become the sun, and the rays are still there, but you know you're not the rays, and you're okay with them. You're fine. Let them shine. Let them do their thing. I'm just rested. It is something that cannot really be explained, but a lot of pointings can point the soul back to its pure mind, where you are your own sovereign being, and intuition is working, and it's we don't need a teacher. We don't need a spiritual leader. But in the beginning, it appears to be so, but it's really you talking to you. It is only ever you. If you hold that image of the sun is whole and complete, and it has billions of rays. Those rays are not separate. They're just coming from the sun. And there's a little bit of space in between them that makes them look like they're separate objects going out, when in fact they're not. So if one ray looks at another, it is the self looking at the self. And I think that illustration is really helpful to a lot of people. So wherever you are on your self-realization journey, take it easy. Don't take life too seriously, because it really is a beautiful dance, a fantastic dance. You can't take my word for it. I absolutely understand that. But it's just to encourage you to just keep on looking. If you keep looking within, use whatever you've got. Just don't give up. Keep going, keep going. And the self will reveal the self to itself. Thank you. And I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll be back with another video shortly. Take care for now. Bye bye.